Hello fellow YouTubers. If you're new to the channel, my name's Neil. If you've been here before, welcome back. This is my current project that I've been working on. This is my camera rig build. This is, I think, version 3. You probably haven't seen a lot of the other versions because I didn't think they were worth it. At the moment, it's just sitting on a block of wood to get it up high enough for the camera, so it's not actually fixed to it. But you can see I put together a couple of different brackets that I bought from AliExpress. Everything you see here other than the V-lock has come from AliExpress. This plate here, which is basically something like this. This one is a slightly different because it's got holes on the side, whereas this one didn't. I didn't realise that until after I got it, so they put the program of building this back a little bit until I got the right ones. Now, I did actually originally build this with two plates, one on the front, one on the back, and having to try and fix this to the back plate. That became a bit of an issue. I then sort of realised that that wasn't the best way of doing things. So what I ended up doing was just going with the front plate, a side plate on either side, a top plate which is fixed to that. Then with this V-mount adapter distributor, I actually drilled and tapped a couple of holes in the top, enabling to put some screws through it to another bracket which bolts onto this rig. So this is clamped to the rails, and I'm gone with the rails over the other manufacturer's designs. They have used a plate, as I say, something like this. My only issue with something like that is you're kind of limited as to where you can put stuff. Yes, you can move it, but you're going to undo the screws every time, or the bolt every time, to actually adjust it to get it into the right spot. Now, they probably put the V-mount on the very, very back back bolt holes, whereas to me that would have been just okay. I didn't like that idea, so that's one of the reasons why I've gone with the rail system. It gives me a lot more adjustability backwards and forwards. Also, with this is a small rig system underneath here which takes the 15mm rails. At a later date, if I wish, I can actually put a mat box on these rails, because a lot of mat boxes are designed to slide onto the rails. Some are designed to clamp on, which is what this ring is for. I actually have a small clamp-on mat box which clamps onto this ring. Now that's great, but it's not always what I want. Sometimes I want it to slide on the rails, so it has both. So I can take this adapter off, I can just slide it onto the rails, it's not a problem. I'm more concerned a little bit with the clamp on, that it may get knocked off easily and damaged if it hits the ground. So I've decided to go with either, depending on what situation I'm going with. So with the rails, which are 15mm, as I say, they slide through the bottom of these. This has got a slide on which is bolted to this bracket here. Okay, this V-mount also has one of these. And as I say, I've taken the cover off, drilled 2 holes through the top, and screwed this plate onto it, which then bolts onto the rest of the system. So all this is quite rigid. It doesn't move. The handle's moving more than anything else. We're now going to take the camera off this rig. So pull apart the battery power cable, get the fat fingers underneath, undo that, and there it is. So normally I would have maybe a monitor sitting on the top of the camera if I'm using it that way. So I would have a HDMI cable coming out and the dummy battery cable. That's 2 cables to unplug and push the button and the whole camera slides off. So it's a nice and quick system. I was using a Manfrotto release system, but I found that a bit cumbersome. You couldn't quite see what you were doing all the time to get it back into position. To me, this actually works a little bit better the way it is. So what we'll do is I'm going to set the GH7 up on the tripod and we'll start talking about the rest of the rig from here on in. Right, so you can see now I've got the camera off. It's sitting over there now recording us rather than this little, I'll get that out. And that's what I was recording on before, which is a Sony RX100 version 7. So we were using that before. So now we've got all this sitting over here. You might be able to see in a little bit more detail. I have the Falcan quick release set up here, so it's just push a button that slides straight out, and able to put the camera on and off reasonably quick. Yes, there is a plate of aluminium underneath it until I can figure out exactly how high I need to get it, which I think is pretty close. I think it's within a couple of mil of being spot on to the mat box. So as I was saying before, I run my whole rig on rails. That enables me to slide everything backwards and forwards, adjust it reasonably quick and easy. As I was saying, the main plate, which has the slide on for the rail system, which is basically one of those, and when I bought it from AliExpress, it came with the plate. Okay, so that's the one I look for. And what I was actually looking for in the plate was I wanted the plate to be approximately the same height as the V-mount adapter here, this was another one I made, the slide on rails, as you can see, but I had it behind the camera, slid that way, so this time I've gone vertical rather than horizontal. So going back to the plate, you want the plate to be roughly the same size as the actual V-mount. So you can see this is actually a little bit too tall. I can't remember the exact height of the V-mount system, but I think it was around the 165, something like that. If I can grab a tape measure, small one. So it's 70 mil wide, and it's 140 the plate plus the rail system. So the 140 is what you actually want. This is the second one I actually bought. I couldn't find it before. That's why I was illustrating with this one, but here we go. I've just found it lying on the table in front of me. That's why I probably couldn't find it, because I wasn't looking there. So as you can see, the rail system is bolted onto the bottom. These bolts were a bag of bolts I bought. There they are there. They are a 1/4 inch. They have a turned section down in the middle. The theory is that these will become captive when you screw them through the plate. The whole idea is when you screw it through the plate, the thread would be hanging out the end, so the turn section would just enable a little bit of movement in here, so when you're lining up the plates it would be fine. Didn't quite work in theory, and the reason being is the section with it that it is actually turned down between the head, and you can't really see it, the head, I'll take one out, might make life a little easier. Right, so the section turned down between the head and the actual thread was not enough to actually pass through the plate and enable it to work. So what I ended up doing, I could have put them in my lathe and turned them down, but I thought, well, most people won't have a lathe to turn things down. You could alternatively, and this is before I had a lathe, this is what I used to do, is put it into a drill, into the chuck, tighten the thread up on the chuck, and I just used a flat blade file, and I'd use the edge of the file just to file the section away that I wanted to remove. And that works reasonably well. In this case, I did it a little bit differently. With the plate, I actually drilled the 1/4 inch holes out a little bit bigger, but not all the way through. So I removed half the thread. I made that a little bit wider, so that the thread would screw, the bolt would screw through the thread and then become loose. So that sort of solved the issue. But in the process of making it, I realized I didn't actually need 2 of these. I could get away with just 1 plate and the 2 sections on the sections on the side, and bolt this to it. Now the way I did that, as I said earlier, I actually bolted a piece of plate, what they call a cheese plate, a small cheese plate, to the top of the V-mount bracket. It's actually got a cover on it. The cover comes off with 4 small screws. I drilled a couple of holes through the top of it and bolted a 1/4 inch bolt straight into these, and that worked reasonably well. It's nowhere near any of the circuitry. Circuitry is a good 25-30 mil away, so that wasn't an issue. And purely by luck, this actual V-lock came with one of those. So that's what it slides along your 15 mil rails, okay? And that was just the right height when I slid it on to get this with the bracket lined up with my top bracket here. So that worked reasonably well. That was just pure luck. I hadn't measured it, it just worked that way. I expected that I would have to make a bracket to bolt the V-lock onto another plate and then slide it all together and put all the bolts in that way. But as it turned out, didn't need to. So, didn't need to buy a plate. These plates, by the way, cost me I think around about 25 Australian dollars with that on it. If you don't want to use this system and you just want to bolt one of these, which you see it's got threads in it, you could just bolt them directly through one of these plates, and you probably find that some of these holes, yes they do, actually line up. So you could pass a bolt right through them, bolt one of these up, bolt your V-lock onto the back of it, put your handle on the top, and away you go. You could just do it that way. You wouldn't need to go to what I have gone to. The only reason I put the extra cheese plates in between is so I could bolt other things like this DTAP breakout or distributor. Okay, so this is what plugs into my V-mount adapter plate, which, as I said earlier, has outlets for different voltages. These little voltages would come in handy for running your monitors, maybe your focus motors, anything like that. Lights, which is, I've got a little light down here, I won't turn it around too far, but that's what it's sort of illuminating what's on the desk a bit better. So those sorts of things would be great. So this just plugs into there. When you've got a battery on it, it gives you the voltage readout, which is handy. We'll turn it on, that's always helpful. Switches on this side in the dark. Oh, I see why it's not on prop. Okay. Yeah, it's not. Oh, I see what the issue is. The bracket's in the way. Nope, it does not wish to go on. Oh, I know why. I forgot I put that on. That was a dumb thing to do, because that I just slid on for the demonstrations won't allow me to put the battery down far enough. Okay, on. Now, voltage readout, if you can see that, you should be able to see that on camera. That enables you to check what is in your battery, so you don't actually have to push the button if you don't want to. I'm plugged into a monitor currently, and from my monitor I can actually see the display of what's on the LCD screen on the camera, and I can see the voltage down there on the screen. So that is very helpful. But if you don't have that set up and you're using a little onboard monitor, which I have I think a 5-inch, it's a little bit on the small side for me to see the actual voltage readout. So having something like that on the side, it's a little bit easier. Plus I like this one because it has a switch on the side that you can turn the whole rig off. Okay, it's got USBs out as well, I've just remembered that. So that is very helpful. That's only a 65 watt. That's, the label's long gone. It was unreadable, or the writing had been rubbed off except for the name, which was a Sony, I think it was. I've just removed the label and just written on it so I know exactly what it is. I've got 2 of these. These are a great little battery, quite small, quite light. If I want to, I actually have one of these, which is designed to go onto your belt, which will take a V-lock as well. I'm actually thinking about making a small rig. This is very tight to get on. So I'm thinking about making a smaller rig if I just want to go with just this battery and the camera. I'm sort of contemplating whether to make a bracket for it to sit underneath the camera, or whether to have it go on the back of the camera. Not sure just yet. Still working on that. Or else you could go with, say, this one I made earlier. This one has an on-off switch. It has, yeah, has a voltage display on the side. I mean, this one cost me around about $60, something like that, $70 at the most to make. It's just some scrap wood, plate on the bottom, etc. Not terribly difficult. Now this one cost me a bit more. I think the V-lock adapter here cost me around about Australian $65. As I said, these plates were around about $25. These 3 plates, they cost me about $7, $8 each, and I bought 3 of them, one on the top, one on each of the sides. Okay, so, and I bought the small rig 15mm rail adapter as well. So I think that, don't quote me, but I think that was around about $30 or $40. And then the handle was about another $20. So look, it might have been 150, 140, something like that all up. It wasn't that expensive in comparison to what's being sold online as the ultimate to fit all cameras. This will fit all cameras. It's not a problem, man. It's fully adjustable. It's got a handle. Not a big deal. So rather than going down the route of buying a big name camera adapter, why not try going down the DIY, let's build it ourselves. There was no wiring, there was no real hard work or anything like that. I used a cordless drill and a drill bit to drill out the holes a little bit so the screws would go through it without any problems. That was the only mechanical bit that I really had to do. And look, you could get away with not doing it. Okay, that wouldn't have been the end of the world. If anything, I would like these bolts to be just a little bit longer. I think they were 15mm maybe, because the plate is, I think, 10 or 12mm, something like that. So a little bit longer would have been nice. As long as you don't over tighten the bolts, you should be good to go. Look, that's about it, really. Don't go and buy something, do it yourself, basically. I know I'm a bit of a cheap ass, but hey, that's the way the world is. We can't all afford to splash out, you know, the $400 odd to buy something that someone has built to sell you. Yes, you can buy these. As I say, I haven't done any wiring on this. I've just bought it, whacked it on, that's it. Everything just, it's plug and play. And that's the way it really should be. So before you go buying something online, why don't you look at building it yourself? What have you got to lose? Anyway, that's my video. That's my take. Like it or lump it. Thanks for watching. Bye.